Welcome to Female Fluence. We are a place of women empowering women. This is a safe environment where females are not judged nor afraid to flourish. My goal is to help you live an energized life of balance, whether as a mom, a wife, or in your profession. It is time to have self-worth and self-compassion. Live in the present moment and surround yourself with only healthy connections. So join me, Promash Shur, a woman empowerment life coach, an educator, and a mother of three, to help take you on a journey of true identity and inspiration. Childhood friendships shape us in ways we don't always recognize until much later in life. Years through which we first see ourselves, offering us belonging, laughter, and sometimes heartbreak. Especially for women, the friendships we form with other girls become emotional lifelines, places where we have seen, heard, and held without needing to perform. These bonds help build our self-worth, our resilience, and our voice. Even though men and women can complement each other, there's something sacred and irreplaceable about female friendships. They offer us space to share our struggles and celebrate our wins without judgment, just love. Today's conversation is a powerful reflection of that. I am joined by an author whose latest novel dives deep into the enduring and sometimes complicated journey of female friendship. Through betrayal, separation, and reconnection, her characters mirror the very real path many of us walk with our childhood friends. If you're a woman, no matter your age, this episode is a reminder to cherish your girlfriends. They are the soul ties that carry us through. Marjan Kamali is the award-winning author of The Lion Women of Tehran, an instant national bestseller. The Stationery Shop, a national and international bestseller, and Together Tea, a Massachusetts Book Award finalist. Marjan's novels are published in translation in more than 30 languages. She is a 2022 recipient of the National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship. She holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from UC Berkeley. She also has a Master of Business Administration from Columbia University and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from New York University. Her essays have also appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Literary Hub, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. Thank you, Marjan, for being on Female Fluence. I'm a huge fan, and I'm very excited on having you on my show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to join you today.
Thank you. So your path to publishing your first novel wasn't a straight line, right? And can you walk us through the twists and turns and the truths that shaped your writing journey?
Sure, that first novel took over 10 years for me to get published. I started writing the very first sentence of it in the back of my business school lecture hall. Those of us with liberal arts backgrounds were taken to a thing called math camp where we had to join 2 weeks early so we could come up to speed on calculus. And between the time when I wrote the very first sentences of what would then become Together Tea and when it was actually out in the bookstores took about 13 years. And there were many reasons it took so long. I mean, first of all, it's difficult to write a novel, especially when it's your first time. Secondly, I was up against a marketplace that was expecting a particular narrative about Middle Eastern people. And when I refused to sort of cater to the narrative, I was told, well, then you won't get published. And that was true. It took a lot longer for things to change. And in general, life happens to all of us. And so I was busy. I had two babies in that time period. For several years, I was a full-time stay-at-home mother, and I moved. I moved across the world. So all of these things were big parts of my life, and the novel was just one part of my life. But then finally, when it was published, I was deeply happy because it felt like the culmination of years of struggle and striving, really.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't give up, even though it took so long, and you continued to write and make your dream of being an author come true. So I'm sure your fans appreciate that. So, what do you know now as a writer and a novelist that you wish you knew from the beginning when you first started this journey?
I think one thing I wish I knew from the very beginning is that life is long. You know, we're always told life is short. And I felt this incredible amount of pressure to be published. I wanted to be published by the time I was 30. I wanted to accomplish certain things by the time I was, this age, that age. And that created a lot of pressure and stress. And honestly, it was sometimes self-defeating. I think I wish I had known that it's okay for things to take the time they need to take. It's okay for your book to be put on the back burner for many years. It's okay for you to grow as a person, to grow as a writer. You just have to trust that your timeline is the timeline you're supposed to be on and not compare yourself to others and see what's going on for them and how fast they're doing XYZ. And this applies to everything. As a young person, you see your friends maybe become coupled or get married or have children. There are all these milestones, and it's okay to remember that you're playing your own game. And that's something I learned the hard way with writing.
I think that's such a great advice, and it really applies to any aspect of your life. It's like just stay on your own journey, focus on you, and be present, and eventually things will work out. So I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. So, your latest novel, The Lion Woman of Tehran, is such a powerful story. I honestly, while reading it, I told you earlier too, I really thought it was a true story because it was so real. I was like, this must be like she probably knew a friend or someone, and she took their story and just changed their names and wrote about them. And then when I realized it was not a real, like a true story, I was like amazed. I mean, what first sparked this idea? And can you share like your inspiration behind it?
Yeah, it's not a true story. I made it up, but the truth is that it contains elements from our shared collective experience, and especially the experience of women my mom's generation. So, a few times I've been doing book signings, and an Iranian woman will come up to me and say, "That was my story. That was
Oh,
my friendship. I had a friend like that." Or that happened to me, things in the book. And so it's an amalgamation of things that I had heard happen in my own family stories, my own family history, emotional dynamics I myself experienced with friends growing up, even though I'm not Ellie and Homa's ages, the two characters in the book. And it's also, to be honest with you, you're going to find common threads in the experience of women of that generation because that's what happened to people. So basically, I had started writing another book, it was a very different book after the Stationery Shop. My second book came out. And that book was about these four mothers in suburbia who were obsessed with their firstborns applying to college and wanting them to get into Ivy Leagues and sort of exploring that whole insanity that I had, lived through. But I mean, yes, it was slowly becoming a murder mystery because the moms were so crazy. But then,
I've real too lately.
yes, it's just such a nonsensical procedure. And when you come out of it, you look back and you're so relieved that it's over. But it was the pandemic and we were in lockdown and I was on Instagram. And on Instagram, I came across these posts from my own old friend, my childhood friend, from the short time I'd lived in Iran. And just seeing her again triggered all these memories. Like I could feel our friendship. It's hard to describe. It's as though I was suddenly transported and I could remember the games we played and how we did homework together and at her mother, her house. And I realized how these childhood friendships that we form when we're young really shape us. They help make us who we are, and that influence lasts even if the friendship itself ends. And I feel like friendship breakups are really heart-wrenching, just as heart-wrenching as romantic ones. So when I was sitting there, I realized I think what I really want to write is the story of a broken friendship. And I had to make a decision. I had to put away the book I had been working on, put away those competitive moms, which I did. And then I started to write the story of Ellie and Homa. And I made them up. I made them up, as you said, but they're born the year my mother was born. They are her generation. And I did that on purpose so I could ask my mother all these questions. And then I borrowed from certain family stories things that had happened to my aunt, for example. My aunt was a political activist and was imprisoned during the Shah's time. So things like that. And then it became a story of Ellie and Homa specifically.
That's great. It's like basically you kind of took different stories, different facts, and kind of put it together and made it your own story. Now, does your friend know that she was the inspiration behind this incredible book?
My friend lives in Iran, and my friend is my friend on Instagram, which means a lot to me because, as you know, so many social media platforms are banned in Iran. Instagram is allowed. I feel the connection is super tenuous. We reconnected after so many years of no contact. So I haven't directly said anything to her. And especially because she's in Iran, I'm very careful about, you
Yes.
know, what I say to her. Um, but she follows me, and if you follow me on Instagram, I've talked about this, so I don't know. I don't know if she knows. But can I just tell you a little anecdote? In the opening of the book, Ellie, our main character, receives a letter from Homa. And in the letter, Homa says, "Call me." And there's a phone number. And that's my old friend's phone number from
Oh,
when we were children.
oh,
Yeah.
that's heartwarming. That's sweet. I love it. Now, do you also think you're going to go back to the other book with the four moms and the Ivy School? I'm curious about that one too.
I get asked about that one a lot, and I've started another book now, but it's not that. Maybe one day. I didn't delete the pages. Maybe one day. Who
Okay.
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's great. Now, how much of the line, I mean, we talked about that. It was shaped by your own family history that you already mentioned, and you said
Mhm.
that. So, when you think back to your childhood in Tehran, what memories rise to the surface? I mean, how old were you when you left? So, like, can you, like, what sounds or smells or moments still linger for you that's like very sentimental and heartwarming?
That's such a great question. I didn't live in Iran very long, so I only lived there between ages 2 and 5. And then again after the revolution, between 9 and 10 and a half.
Okay.
So that second segment was very pivotal because it was after the revolution. It was when the laws were rapidly changing, and it's also during the time of the war. The war began when I was there, and I was there for the first almost year and a half of it. So it's funny because it's divided into two sections. The earlier years pre-revolution, I remember a lot of family gatherings. I remember the sound of big, like, birthday parties and get-togethers, the mehmunis. I remember all the food. I remember my relatives, my extended family in that network. And that was my world. And that's really all I needed. And then in that second segment, when I was 9 to 10 and a half, I remember school. I remember the sirens, talk about sounds, the agir, as we call them, the sirens that signaled that we need to go to the basement because we were being bombed.
Scary sounds, right?
Yep, yep. And I also remember joyful sounds like the sound of my parents and their friends from college. Again, those gatherings. And I remember small details like the taste of the pofak namaki, the snack. Love that so much. And I remember the ice cream very much. And those ice cream sandwiches are in the Lion Women of Tehran. And talk about little bits and pieces from my own life that are in the book. Homa and Ellie formed their friendship learning how to cook in Homa's kitchen. And I described that stone kitchen. And that's my grandmother's kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I was able to bring to life that kitchen, which was such a core memory for me. But most of my memories of Iran, even though I lived there during the war and during a time of big oppression, especially because the dress code was changed while I was there, but I still have mostly good memories.
That's good. That's good that you can hold on to those, right? And pass
Mhm.
it on to your kids and in your stories. So that's incredible. After leaving Iran and starting over in New York, your life took a very different path than your friends that you left behind, right? Kind of like similar to the story. How did that split change, shape your perspective, and how does it echo through your characters? Because it's hard, like that, the people that we leave behind and you have to move on. And I always say, I mean, even today, I always have this like survivor's guilt. Like I feel like, well, I'm here, I can make comments, I look online, feel bad, I have family over there, there's all this stuff that's going on, but I feel guilty. Like I'm living here comfortably and enjoying my life and it's like, you know what I mean? It's a harsh feeling like to kind of live with, to go through, especially if you have loved ones that are still there and that they have gone through so much war and so much upheaval. Like there's so many transformation that does never seems to settle down, right?
Yes, yes. Survivor's guilt is a real thing, and I definitely had it, even though I didn't have a name for it. But there was this strong sense, especially because there was a war happening. So there was this strong sense of we got out. I was the one who got away. I was able to leave. And look at me, I'm here, I'm in this country, this free country, especially at that time, we couldn't envision a time when freedom would be in question in America. And so there was that sense of I better make the most of the opportunities I've
Yes,
been given.
right.
And that's why so many immigrant children are overachievers because
Yeah.
we're compensating for the people that couldn't do it.
Yeah, and you nailed it right on. I feel like it's part that and part like your parents saying like, we gave up everything, we left our beautiful house, our jobs, everything. We came here for you guys. And you
Yeah.
have this in the back of your head, like, oh gosh, I have to be something, I have to do something amazing with my life because you feel guilty if you don't, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. You're very, very right. Now, you've lived actually all over the world. From what I see, Kenya, Germany, Turkey, Iran, US, Switzerland, and Australia. With so many landscapes shaping you, how has the idea of home evolved over time? And how does that complex relationship with the home show up in your writing, especially in your books? Because it's hard, right? It's like what is home when you move around so much?
When you move around so much, you're always trying to find a sense of home. And I certainly was. And it took me a while to realize that my home is not going to be in a region. So I don't really have a specific geographic region the way some people do, where they have these roots and they can say that's where I always spent my childhood and I've been here all these. No, that's not the way mine worked. But in my case, because we moved so much, there was this traveling Persianate culture that we took with us. So it didn't matter where we were. The house I came home to at the end of the day was very Persian, very Iranian, and I spoke Persian to my parents. I ate Iranian food. I was taught about Persian literature, and it was instilled in me to have this pride in the culture. And we lived in so many different countries, but what was home was mostly my family because I was grateful to be with them no matter where we were, and the Persian culture because we carried it wherever we were, and also books. Books became my homeland. Everywhere we went, one of the first places we'd visit would be the public library. And I loved reading from a very, very young age, and I just took to books, and books became my home in a way because wherever I was, I could read.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think home is where the heart is, as they say it, right? So that's like it's like you smell the food, you feel the love. And just like you, I love reading. And as an immigrant, like once I started learning how to read in English, I was so fascinated and so excited. I would literally ask my parents just to drop me off at the library. I mean, I was that nerd. Like I was the nerd on a Sunday, Saturday, drop me off for a few hours, and I just loved it. I mean, still to this day, like somebody just dropped me off at the bookstore. Nobody talked to me. I have my cup of coffee and I have like some hours like of it's peaceful. I just like to go through, read the books, get excited about what my list is going to be for the future, buy some books for like so it's interesting how that just stays with you. And I feel like part of that was like it was an part of it is because I had this incredible teacher that taught me how to speak English, and she changed my life, and I just felt like there was this other world that I had no idea about, and it's books. So you could just travel, go anywhere with each story that you read, and still to this day that has stayed with me. So
Yeah, it's such a gift.
it is a gift. Now, did you always know you were going to be an author? And I have to ask this too, what were your parents? Because I know Persian parents, oh, how do you know? How do you know that's going to happen? Just write as a hobby. It's not going to make you money, right? Like, so how did you overcome all of those obstacles?
Well, the obstacles were certainly there. I didn't always know I wanted to be a writer, but I always wrote. So I always wrote, and I wrote plays and short stories and poems, and I love to read. In my heart, I think I wanted to be a writer, but it just seemed so unattainable. So unattainable. And like you, as a vocation, like you, my teachers were very key in helping me, in shaping me. Elementary school, middle school, high school, college, my teachers encouraged me, my English teachers, to be a writer. But I always felt that that wasn't an option as a career because we were encouraged to become doctors or engineers or lawyers. I mean, you know the story. This
Yes.
is not uncommon. It's just that what I really wanted was to be a writer. And then when I was in college, my professor during office hours talked to me and he talked to me about my writing and he said, I think you should change your major and I think you should be a writer. And him saying that was very key because it helped me feel legitimate. And, the fact that he believed I could do it as a career was huge. So I did change my major, but it took a very long time to get there. But I did, start to think of it as career, as a vocation in college and high school, probably. Yeah.
That's great. And I just feel like teachers, educators, if you have the right ones, they can have such a powerful impact on your life. And on the other side of it, if you have the wrong ones, and they discourage you or call you a word or do something, then that can affect you as well. But the good ones, can really change your life because you just look up to these people. They're your heroes and you listen to them. It's different than your parents or your friends, but someone like that. I ended up becoming a teacher too. I used to be an educator. Yeah. And so then I had the kids, and then, as you know, life pushes you in different directions. I decided now kind of to work with women and empower them. And I love doing the podcast. But I just loved it. And I just feel like it was because of my teacher that I wanted to be a teacher, because she left such an impact on me, and she made me believe in myself. So I wanted to pass that forward. So
I love that. I love
yeah,
that so much.
yeah. So now in the Lion Women of Tehran, Ellie and Homa, which are your main two characters, they felt so real. I wanted to become friends with them, right? So I want to know, what's your process as an author for developing characters that feel so real and emotionally layered? Like, how do you do that as an author?
It takes a lot of time and it's very inefficient. So sometimes I tell my writing students the things that I do, and they tell me, wow, that sounds like it's not very efficient. And then I'll say, yeah, it's not. I mean, who said art should be efficient? You could be efficient in your other jobs, you know. I really try to make the character a person that I know better than people I know in my real life, even. And because I'm creating the character, there are things I can do. I write journals in their voice, and a lot of these entries never make it into the books, but they're there, and I get to know the person that way. And I write a lot in their point of view, even if their point of view isn't the point of view used in the telling of the story. And I really force myself to ask difficult questions about who they are deep down, not who they just present themselves to be. And then once I know that, then when I write the story, and also I don't want to act like I do that first, then I write the story. It's all happening at the same time in tandem. But as I get to know the character, then they help drive the story.
Right. How long did this book take you from beginning to end?
It took me 2.5 years to write the first draft, and it took me another year to revise it.
And you have to be really disciplined, right? As an author, I feel like, because it's kind of like your own schedule, your own idea. But if you don't stick to it, then it's going to take you such a long time. So do you like kind of set and say, okay, I'm going to be writing, I'm going to be in my office, and from this time to that time every single day? Or do you kind of like wake up in the middle of the night with an idea and you're just like, I need to go write? Like it's just calling out my name, all these stories and thoughts and ideas. Or is it
It's
a
a it's a
combination?
combination. Yeah, it's a combination because on the one hand, you you know that you have to be disciplined. You always hear you should write every day. I've never quite succeeded in doing that, but knowing that that's an aspiration helps because if you think to yourself, I should write every day, then you might end up writing several times a week, which is really fine as well. It's all good. And then when the inspiration strikes in the middle of the night, yes, you scribble it down. In the shower, yes, get out, write it down. I've also learned to never pretend to think I'll remember if I don't write it down because that's not how it works. But you have to give up other things in your life. When I was writing The Stationery Shop, my second book, for example, I gained weight. I had hip issues because I wasn't exercising. There was only so much time in the day. I had to choose between, you know, my part-time job and my family life and running the household and writing or adding in exercise. I couldn't do all of the above. So I made a choice. I don't know if it was, we'll see. But now I'm in a different stage in my life, so hopefully, I can also add in the physical movement. But it's a constant situation, unfortunately, where you have to say no to things
Yeah.
in order to say yes to writing your book.
Right. Yeah. I think that's how you have to be because it does take discipline. And I just think the way you were describing building your characters and writing journals from their point of view, that's incredible. I didn't even, I mean, you really dive into because like when actors like play the role,
Yes.
right? It's but you're kind of like creating the role and playing the role like all at the same time versus an actor is given the script, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
says, okay, I'm gonna fall into this role. That's really talented to be able to do that. Like create that story, create these characters, and really like you have to go inside each character's head because when as I like you did that with this book, each section is from like one person's point of view. So you fall into that character's point of view to take the reader and show them like that person's perspective, which is really neat the way you do that. So
Thank you. Yes, it's like you said, when you're an actor and you delve into figuring out who this character is, your role is to portray the character. But when you are a novelist, you are the actor and you're the director and you're the writer, obviously,
you're
and you're the
everything.
producer.
Marjan, you're
Yeah,
pretty
you're
much
everything.
everything.
Mhm. You're the
So, I mean,
crew.
it's a lot of control, a lot of power, but it's very empowering if you can do it and you're talented to be able to do it. And then you have your readers get excited, to read what you have created out of your own imagination. It's very powerful. So your Lion Woman of Tehran carries so much strength in that title. I love the title. In just those few words, you just feel powerful and immediately like I feel like it's a term now. It's like, oh, I want to be like a lion woman, right? Like that's how you so what inspired the title and who are the lion women in your own world, past or present? And do you see yourself as one? And what earns you that name if you do? That's a fully
Great.
loaded question.
That's a great question. Lion women is a phrase I heard a lot growing up, and it was Shirzan, right? Shirzan. And I would hear it, for example, in that second segment when I lived in Iran, when the laws were changing, especially for women, and the war was happening. And I would hear like my aunts or, my relatives say, she's a Shirzan. That's a Shirzan. And it described a woman who is very strong and who doesn't take nonsense from anybody and who knows who she is. And a lot of times people think of strength as bravery or you're out on the streets the way Homa is. Well, Homa is a lion woman for sure. She's out on the streets. She's courageous. She protests. She believes in justice. But I think a true lion woman is a person who knows who they are deep down
Yeah,
and who doesn't let other people and other circumstances affect their inner peace. That's being a lion woman too. So, as far as the title, I will admit this wasn't even my idea for the title. I wrote the book, I talked about lion women. There's the scene where Homa says to Ellie when they're children, we will grow up to be lion women. And lion women as a term appears throughout the book as a pattern. But sometimes the most obvious thing is the thing you don't see. So it took my editor to say, I think this should be called the Lion Women of Tehran. And at first I said, no, 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 it shouldn't be called that. But now I can't imagine it being called anything else. And people love the title. The Lion Women in my own life, certainly my mother, so many of my relatives. It really surprises me to know that so many people in the West think of Iranian women as these very docile, submissive, quiet
yeah,
creatures. I don't know if they've met Iranian women. I mean, we are opinionated, we are loud, we're
that's
certainly not
exactly
docile.
opposite of what they would think, right?
Yes, yes. So in my own life, my mom, my aunts, I'm surrounded by these lion women. And am I a lion woman? I am deep down. I think for many years I didn't know I was, you see, because we all are conditioned by our circumstances to behave in certain ways. And like you said, the survivor's guilt, immigration, this constant barrage of misinformation about who people assume you are that you constantly have to correct, which
Yes.
can become exhausting. But but no, I am, you know. I think the people who know me best know that I am. And I'm proud to be one. I'm proud to have raised one. And I feel like let's continue the legacy of Lion Women. It's our legacy.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think you have created a new term, a new word for empowerment that I will, I think everyone's going to strive to be, right? That lion woman. Now, Ellie and Homa's friendship runs really deep. Why do you think women's relationships are so rich, emotionally rich compared to male relationships? Is there something about how women hold space for each other that creates that depth, like that emotion?
I think women's friendships and men's friendships are very different. And I was driving the other day, and like magic, this author was being interviewed about her book on friendship. I wish I could remember her name. She recently wrote a book about female friendship. And what she said that women's friendships are based on sharing emotional truths. We share with each other emotional terrain, and that's how the bond is formed, and that's how the friendship develops. And male friendships are usually based on doing things together, activities together. And nothing showed me this more than during the pandemic because I noticed that girls had a harder time being in isolation because they were used to being together in a room and just talking their heads off. And you could argue they could do that maybe on FaceTime or on the internet. But I noticed it was easier for my son and his friends because they were still able to partake in activities online together, the games or,
Games or yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's one of the main differences. And women's friendships are established and grown by the sharing of emotional truths.
Yeah, that's very true because men, I feel like it's like they're either talking about the news, the politics, and then there's a lot of sports involved. It's either watching sports, playing sports, talking about sports, right? And sometimes like it's like, I'll even ask my husband, like, well, what happened? Did you ask about that? And he's like, oh, we never got around to that. Like they don't get into like any of the real like I'm like, are you serious? You just sat for 2 hours and you guys just talked politics and sports the entire 2 hours? That's
Yep.
what they do, and they're okay with it. And then they release their stress by playing sports. We release it sitting around, maybe having a glass of wine, either talking, crying, sharing, and that's our interaction. So it is different. It's interesting how we need different things. What message do you mostly hope that your readers carry with them after finishing your most recent book?
I hope that they feel a sense of healing, you know. I think in all of my books, in all three books so far, there is a lot of loss that occurs through the course of the story. And there's a sense of needing to start over. And a lot of that is just part of the migration experience, but the Iranian experience too. Even people who didn't leave had to start over. But I hope that the reader comes out of this feeling empowered and healed. Because when you read, especially Homa's journey in the Lion Women of Tehran, Homa goes through some pretty difficult things. And she experiences this trauma when she doesn't have access to talk therapy or medication or so many of the resources we rely on today, now, here. But she manages to dig deep within her own self and to heal herself in the best way she knows how, whether that's by going on really long walks or reading. Books help heal her too. or just a few of her family members that she knows she can count on, who she knows she can count on. That's how she does it. So I want my reader to come out of this feeling slightly healed. It's healing fiction.
I agree with you. Now, last question for that author or aspiring author, what would you say to someone, who wants to write that book but doubts himself or believes it's too late to start?
Mm. Well, I would say the self-doubt is part of the territory. I don't think there's a single writer on this earth, or has there been a single writer on this earth who has not grappled with self-doubt. And those who tell you they don't have self-doubt, I kind of don't believe them. Or maybe their writing isn't as deep because yeah, you have self-doubt. That's just how it works. So don't worry about the self-doubt. Just acknowledge that as part of the territory. As far as whether or not it's too late, there are careers that you age out of, and one of those, for example, is being a supermodel. So if somebody wants to be a supermodel and they haven't, achieved that by a certain age, it could be too late. I would say maybe, maybe not. But writing, you don't age out of ever until you die or lose your mind, whichever comes first. So I think it's fine. You can start when you're 65, you can start when you're 73, you can start as long as you have the capacity to tell a story.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, this has been incredible. In today's episode, we have explored the soul deep power of female friendship, the kind of bond that shapes us, holds us, and often runs deeper than words. We also unpacked the essence of a lion woman, what it means to earn that title through strength, resilience, and truth. As a reader and a fan, I've always admired how you can weave your stories that create an instant emotional connection, not just to your characters, but to the heart of the setting itself. This conversation just a beautiful reminder of the power of sisterhood, story, and identity. Thank you, Marjan, for being a guest on Female Fluence. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today?
I would like to say how grateful I am for your podcast. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this discussion very much, and I've listened to some of your previous interviews and learned so much. So thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That means so much, especially coming from you. So I really, really appreciate it. All the links and how to find Marjan's information will be on my show notes. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Female Fluence on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you are in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Pearl Mashur. Until we talk next time.